HR tech, work tech, and investment are transforming the future of work. Are you in the know? Welcome to the Work Tech Podcast. Join host George LaRocque for expert insights on the trends, M&A activity, and strategies shaping the workplace. Brought to you by oneworktech.com and the Work Defined Podcast Network.
It's George LaRocque. Welcome back to Work Tech. We've got industry breaking news, and I'm excited to have Rich Wilson, CEO of Gigged.AI, here to talk about their recent raise of £1 million, which is about 1.34 million US for those who operate in that currency. And Gigged.AI is a platform I've been really interested in for a while, so I'm excited to dig in on this. Welcome, Rich.
Thanks for having me, George.
Yeah, well, let's start with introductions, yourself and Gigged.AI. Just real quick, who you and Gigged.AI.
Yeah, so I'm Rich Wilson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Gigged.AI, and the platform it's a tech hiring platform in its purest play. Now, as we've went through the journey, we've evolved that to much more go into more skills intelligence and everything else. But the purest form is that large enterprises use our technology to fill skill gaps quickly, and that's what it does. There are different ways that we do it. I come from a staffing background. My co-founder was a contractor himself, so we've lived in this space our whole career. Right? We've lived in it, we've breathed it, we've seen the pain of it. I was a recruiter at 21, making 50 calls a day to contractors, placing them in contractors. We've done the hard yards. I spent 12 years with the Leaders Group, where I learned a ton. I helped build the tech systems brand, and learned a ton from working with an amazing group there. And then spent some time with Gartner as well, which again I learned a lot. Both hugely different companies and hugely different learnings, but the kind of thing that kept them together was that every client I dealt with and every customer I was having time with, there was a key thread that ran through it, and it was all around people being stressed out because they couldn't deliver the projects on time. And obviously that's only getting worse.
Yeah. So you talked about the evolution. I'd love to get into, I like a good origin story. So from what I picked up, I just recently read this, you've been at it for 4 years and you started in a Glasgow apartment. So give us the Reader's Digest, sort of that apartment to today.
Yeah. So it was Craig's apartment, my co-founder. Me and Craig grew up in a small town just outside Glasgow. We've known each other for probably 20 years. He worked mainly at banks as a builder of platforms mainly, and then I went down the staffing route. But we've kept in touch ever since. And I had an idea, as I was leaving the Leaders Group, I had an idea to build a platform. I didn't do it straight away, but I had an idea. And my brother kept saying to me, "Hey, you should speak to Craig." And I was like, "Yeah, I will." But anyway, 2 years later, I hadn't spoke to Craig. And my brother said, "Will you please go and speak to Craig?" So Craig was building a platform called Hourlies, which was a similar concept. It was being able to find IT talent really quickly for short hourly-based projects. But I come from the staffing world and the business side. I'm not technical. And I was working in large statement of work kind of engagements, being able to build large contract project teams to do large outcome-based pieces of work, mainly within digital transformation. 10 years ago when people were trying to build an app, they would use us to build that app, and we'd put together a team to create that outcome. And so anyway, we got talking during COVID, and one thing led to another, and we both got to the point where we thought, you know what, we only got one shot at this. And so we quit our jobs, both pretty high paying, comfortable jobs. My wife wasn't too happy, and we quit our jobs in July 2021. We had a plan, like this, and we just started building, right? And we just, obviously it was a very different time. It was a little bit easier a lot easier to get venture capital. We raised a round within a month. It was an easier time to build a startup. Well, maybe from a venture capital, it was easier then. It's probably easier now, technically wise. But we spent a lot of time building the MVP, been able to really test the hypothesis out and build it from there. But yeah, we started and we hired a couple of friends, Rachel and Harvey, to come in and help us as freelancers, and we just got to work in his apartment. He's got a nice apartment. You can get a good apartment in Glasgow for not a lot of money, right? So I'd spent a lot of time mainly in the US and London, and we decided we want to build our HQ in Glasgow. It's not an easy place to build a startup, but there are some huge benefits. The talent here, there are Scottish enterprise who do support ambitious startups. And there is quite an HR tech scene. There's Candidate ID who sold to iSIMS. There's Audro. There's Willow. There are some pretty good HR tech companies here. So there's a very small community of us. We call ourselves the HR tech mafia, but we help each other. We make intros and everything else. But yeah, it all started from Craig's apartment and just building that version 1 of the product.
Yeah. So I have to ask you, does your brother take credit for your company starting?
He does, and he's definitely going to try and keep some equity when we sell. Yeah, no, definitely. He dines out on that a lot. I think one of the LinkedIn comments was him dining out on that again, George. So yes, he
okay.
does.
Brothers are good for that. Brothers are good for that.
Yeah. He's going to want a check at some point, I'm sure.
Right. So, £1 million, it was backed by Par Equity. You mentioned Scottish Enterprise, and then you had some high profile angels from Skyscanner, User Testing, and Alteryx. It's a tough time to raise money right now. And I have to tell you, I just did my H1 update, and I was stressing again how especially difficult it is in talent acquisition. And I'm wondering, when what does this signal to you, these investors, stepping up in this seed about Gigged.AI and about, what you're doing in the market?
Yeah, I think we're at that messy middle, right? And I think historically that's been quite a good time for investors to come in and do a much bigger round. But I think at the moment there is obviously a hesitance to really put in big money to a company that's 4 years in. If you're 6 months in and you've worked at OpenAI, then there's $10 billion valuations getting put out there. But if you have been going for 4 years and you're building your product market fit and you're building it the right way, that does fall into you can risk falling into a little bit of a void there.
Yeah.
So for us, I think the signal is that we're onto something. I think for us, the people who have all came in are existing investors. So Par Equity invested in us 2.5 years ago. Very early. We were pre-revenue, pre-client. We were building something then, and they seen what we were doing, and they invested. And they've supported us throughout that journey, throughout those pivots, and through those highs and the lows, because there has been highs and lows. Scottish Enterprise obviously have came in as an investor into this round. Scottish Enterprise have supported us from grant and innovation funding, but they have now came in and actually taken some skin in the game. And then we've, in Scotland, there's not a ton of unicorns, but there's some very good success stories. Skyscanner being the biggest one. And we've got, former chief operating officer and former chief financial officer of Skyscanner who've invested directly into Gigged.AI as part of this round. And we have brought in Andy, who was the CEO of User Testing, Andy McMillan, and is now the CEO of Irvine-based California Alteryx. He's believes in Scotland. He's Scottish. You wouldn't believe it talking to him, but he is. And he built User Testing, bought a huge base here in Scotland. And I met him a couple of years ago, and we kept in touch, and he kind of was really interested around the gig economy and what we were doing. And when I shared the round, he was like, "Look, love what you guys are doing. Can I invest?" And we had various green lights like that over the last couple of months. And I think that's what really, because there were some dark moments building a startup. You go, "Hey, are we on the right path here?" And we had various green lights, customer green lights and investor green lights, and it made us go, you know what? We don't need to do a blockbuster round here, but let's do the £1 million raise. Let's increase our runway. Let's make sure there's some areas we can invest in. It's not like we are generating revenue. We are growing month on month. June was another record month for us, so we need to keep that going. and we want to get to this place where we are cash flow positive within the next 12 months. That's a big goal for us. But yeah, for us, it really signified that, I think we're onto something, but I'm biased, right? So having other people be able to go, you know what? And also customers are using it, right? We have enterprises that are using either of our two platforms on a daily basis. And if we turned around and said, you know what, we're going to cease to exist and we're going to wrap up the company, those enterprises would have a problem in their hands. And that's what really made me think, you know what, that was a catalyst. It was good to have angel investors and investors saying yes, but actually when I thought we're actually becoming really important to the supply chain of those customers, that's when you're onto something, and that's when you need to double down on what we're doing. So that is the plan of attack from now on out.
Yeah. You talk, your name is Gigged, and you talk about the gig economy, but I think, I've seen from the very early stages of my career where contract placement started, and I view this as, whether you look at it as the contingent workforce or whether you think about, I've heard a term lately, the independent workforce, you're really, I love the language on your site. You talk about an enterprise platform for skills and project-driven hiring. And that's really, that really sums it up right there. These resources, can come in a few different shapes and models, but can you maybe dig in a little bit more about, what that means to your customers? Because I think that is a critical point for you and your success on this round.
Yeah, absolutely. So I said I come from a traditional staffing background, and again, it wasn't placing full-time hires. I was in contracting and statement of work, right? So I've always been in what they call it contingent, contract, freelance, independent, whatever you call it. I've always been in that space, and I've always been a bit of a staffing geek, right? I was lucky to be trusted by a leaders group for many years to build different businesses and business units and business lines throughout that time, and we really seen the rise in statement of work, right? That different way to procure talent, not through an MSP, not often through a VMS, but directly to that organization. And it was usually a large tech consultancy that was doing it. And so we've seen it, that market is growing. Staffing industry analysts talk about that all the time. It's just growing, it's exploding. So that's where we thought, well, how do we really build a platform that can actually play in that space? Because, if you think about it, KPMG, Deloitte, Accenture, they've all bought PwC, they've all bought gig platforms. Pixel, Talent Exchange, Gigged.AI, various, and there's other ones being launched all the time. Everybody's trying to play in this space, but it's very hard to play in the space. And you need to know the space intrinsically well. And so I go back to the fact, I have been on the phone to customers on a Friday when the project's delayed and you're getting shouted at, why is my contractor not on site? I know what it's like, right? It's real. Right. The stress is real. So the hypothesis that we had was that we're going to, and we've seen this in the UK, and I think it's the same in the US, full-time hiring is continuing to decrease. We've had 35 quarters in the UK of full-time vacancies decreasing. We're seeing it with Microsoft, and we're seeing it with plenty of other big companies. Full-time headcount is reducing. At Gigged.AI, we have 10 full-time employees, probably not going to increase that, because you can have a lean workforce, but use different talent pools to be able to stay productive. And we believe that trend is going to continue. But we also believe that large companies are going to continue to do big projects, whether that be digital transformation, or more likely, how they can integrate AI into their technology, which is still another form of digital transformation. But to do that, you're still going to need people, but you're going to need them quicker, and you're going to need them for shorter pieces of work, and you're still going to need to get that done. But you're then still going to need to be able to harness your smaller pool of full-time workers, because you're not going to be able to have the retention because you've got a smaller team, so you're going to need to keep them. So the way that we've focused is, first of all, we now sell directly only to enterprise. So we don't work through any third parties. We work purely with enterprise within 4 verticals at the moment. Those verticals are tech consulting. So we work largely with tech consulting companies who need to ramp up people for their projects, or they need to manage their bench. We then work with energy firms. We've done a lot of work within the energy space. They're doing way behind most energy firms in digital transformation, so they need access to talent. Financial services is growing. That's been the hardest nut to crack for us so far. Biggest customer is financial services, but growing that is definitely taking us some time. And then retail is another one. So we work with some of the largest retailers in the US and the UK who have huge revenue streams, but tiny tech teams. And they need different ways to be able to access talent. And how we do that, we have two platforms, George. The first platform is our on-demand talent platform, and that kind of says what it does in the tin. It uses generative AI to create a statement of work. That can be an outcome or a time and material statement of work, and it will break down deliverables and outcomes and break it all down into a very detailed SOW, which again is what me and my team used to do day in, day out on the phone, pad and paper, qualifying the rec, which would then turn into an SOW. So we automated that. We've done that 3.5 years ago, we automated that. And we still used exactly the same version of that. But then we've built our own skill-based matching, and we believe that skills-based actually works best. And we've built our own matching algorithms using ONET, using Sophia, using lots of different skill frameworks. So we've spent a lot of time. People always say, where's the AI in Gigged.AI? Look, before we had all of the AI wrappers, the key was that we built our own matching algorithms based on those large job, mainly ONET, right? We really take ONET and we built our own algorithms off the back of ONET. But what that would allow us to do would be able to match skills very, very quickly and very accurately. But we still have a people element to be able to then do the interviewing. We've not outsourced AI interviewing. I don't think we're going to. We're going to continue to use good old-fashioned humans to do the interviewing, to then make sure that anybody our customer then sees has been vetted by a human being, as well as the AI matching. And then we do the EOR is all integrated in, payments are all in, so you can go on, create an SOW, have a match, make a hire, and all of your compliance and payment issues are all done in the end-to-end platform. Now, it's a pretty tricky build, but that has now been in market for 3 years. We pivoted about 18 months ago fully to enterprise, and that pivot has worked. And then the second platform, which is really a follow-on, is what we call our skills intelligence platform. Now, we used to call that our internal talent marketplace, and that came, I was inspired when I was at Gartner. When I was at Gartner, there was a lot of research around contingent work and what platforms, and it was mainly Upwork and Fiverr, all good. But they weren't really working for a lot of enterprise at the time, because they were working for everybody, and that's kind of part of the reason we pivoted to enterprise only, because it is hard to do SMB and enterprise at the same time. Not impossible, but hard, and we couldn't do it. So, but in the skills intelligence, we realized that Gartner were pushing a lot internal talent marketplaces. And there's good solutions out there, and there's bad solutions out there. But what we realized was that within the tech teams we were working with the chief information officer, chief technology officer, chief data officer. We're not being brought in by the HR, head of CHRO, very rarely. We're not being brought in by workforce transformation. We're usually being brought in by the tech leaders that are trying to solve their skill challenges in their own way, because they don't want to be dictated to. So the skills intelligence platform allows them to tap into different talent pools, and the internal talent pool being the big one, right? So if I have 4,000 data engineers, well, who has Tableau? Who has Salesforce? Who is really proficient at Python? It's really hard to know when you've got that many. But if I don't have somebody available, can I then tap into other talent pools? And that's where the on-demand can come back in. It can be integrated or not integrated. And then we can tap into your pre-built AI agents as well. So one of our big financial services clients, they've got 1,100 agents right now they've built with OpenAI mostly. They've no idea what agents they have, what tasks to match those. It's exactly the same as matching an internal employee. So, the big vision for us is that skills intelligence really becomes the single platform, that we don't have multiple platforms, but the user behavior is not there right now. We have 12 active enterprises, 9 of them are using the on-demand. and 3 of them are using the skills intelligence for the full subscription. We see that growing. Most of the reasons, the least barrier to entry, the easiest way to engage is the on-demand talent platform. And that's where our relationship usually starts with that enterprise. Then we take them through the journey.
Yeah. So your new, you've evolved to where you're actually not just looking at the human talent, but you're looking at the agents that these companies have built internally. That's a huge challenge, and it's already a challenge, but it is still emerging because as you know, we're right at the beginning of this whole agentic era. And there's a lot of value in that. Like the whole, on the talent side, we talk about build, buy, bot, right? Which do I deploy? And that's where you're headed, is helping with that. Is that right?
That's where we're headed. And what we're going to be very careful not to do, though. Microsoft have a marketplace now for agents. ServiceNow have, Anthropic, and Google just launched. There's going to be so many different marketplaces. Mm-hmm. What we've decided to do is we're not going to be a marketplace for you to do the buy part.
Right.
But once you've done the buy, how do you then, because our hypothesis is that they are going to be companies with 1,100, 2,000, 5,000. Satya Nadella says there's going to be 1.8 billion agents in the next 3 years built using Microsoft Agent Builder. Now, if that's even remotely close, you've got exactly the same problem. If you think about, in 2020, companies overhired, right? Everybody started hiring the best software developers, best data engineers, and then guess what? 2 years later, what did they do? Huge layoffs because they overhired and they didn't have the budget to then keep them. It's going to be exactly the same with agents. Right? Yeah. You're going to have thousands of agents. You don't use them. You don't know what they do. They're not kept up to date. They don't talk to each other. So exactly the same as you have with humans. So our view is, let's not separate them, right? Let's give the customer the choice. Create the task. What am I trying to do? Do I have anybody internally in my smaller full-time talent pool that can do that piece of work?
Yeah.
Yes or no? Yeah. Do I have a contingent, freelancer, side hustler, whatever you want to call them, that can do that piece of work? Yes or no? Do I have an agent that is built, or is it a combination of all of the three? Now that's more difficult, and we're not there yet. Yeah, but where we're trying to get to is, look, let's figure out what's the best way to get that work done and get that work done quickly. Because at the end of the day, the person still has that project manager, that product manager, that CTO. They're still under pressure to deliver new products that need to deliver on time, or they're getting fired. That's not changed. And it's not changed in the last 30 years. It's still the same. But how we deliver is changing. The days of putting a rec out to 10 recruitment companies and getting loads of resumes in and then interviewing them, and then, who's got time for that anymore?
Right.
There's still some companies that do it, but nobody's got time for that anymore. There needs to be a quicker way to access talent.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to make happen.
Yeah. So you released, was SIA, is that an agent? Or, okay. And I have to give you kudos because I'll let you talk about the acronym, what it stands for, but I've gotten exhaustion over the human named bots, but this is not, but it sounds like it. I thought, what a creative,
that was on purpose. That was on purpose. So our team, we were talking and, we were like, I want a skills intelligence agent. And initially it was SIA. Well, obviously staff and industry analyst is SIA. We thought that's just going to complicate people. And then some of the ideas were, well, we could have a picture and it could be and I said, look, everybody's exhausted of women's names and women being chatbots. Everybody's bored of that, right? We're not doing that. So, and really the premise around SIA is that we have packed our platform full of features. And a lot of what we realize now we're getting good use cases and we can actually test out whether we've got product market fit or not in that product. We realized that it's not being used the way we thought it's getting used. And very quickly people would come in and just try and search the talent bar. Now that's really not, and that was the same in both platforms. People just want to go and search. And we've got a dashboard and we've got all these fancy chatbots to create the SOW, we've got the analytics. People are just going straight to search.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, the reason they're going straight to search, though, is because they're just trying to get an answer quickly. They don't have time. They are under pressure. So what we decided to do was to give our customer success team a bit of slack. Could instead of having a dashboard, when you log in to the platform, it's an agent. It looks like OpenAI or Anthropic or anything else. And you can talk to it or you can ask it questions. But it's extrapolating your data, not our data, your data. So you can be, hey, do I have any Tableau developers? Right? Where am I weak in my skill set? We had a customer recently that was being audited by KPMG, and part of the audit was you have no handle on what cybersecurity skills you have in your organization. So again, they could go to CA and say, hey, how many cybersecurity specialists do I have? They had 3. They thought they had more than that. They really only had 3. So they were able to then make some decisions. So really all CA is there to do is be able to get you the information that you need really, really quickly, so you then don't need to go and post a gig, get the matches, go through, because we just realized that the user behavior is just not there now. It's changed. The interfaces that we've been used to working with over the last 2 years, that's the norm now. So it's a hard build, to be honest, right? Because you're having to pull from lots of data, and it does hallucinate, right? All current large language models hallucinate. So it's trying to reduce those hallucinations down and being able to show it where that data is coming from. And that's the provability, being able to say, well, this data came from this, right, and it's not just made up. But yeah, it really came from, I always feel that if I hear something from a customer 5 times or more from the same customer, that's usually a sign that we need to do. I don't like to jump to product build straight away, and I don't like to just make knee-jerk reactions. So we kept hearing how your interface could be a bit slicker. It's taking me a bit too much time to get the answers I need. And I heard that, I said about 5 times within about 8 weeks. And I thought, guys, we need to fix this. We need to fix it. Yep. So that's why we created SEER. And then, we thought people are sick of the names and the humans. So let's just make it look like an agent. Yeah. And it's not a person pretending to be anything else.
Yeah, that's great. So, all right. So that all gives me a really good view as to, the opportunity you have here and why the pivot that you mentioned drove this adoption and traction. So now back to the funding. What are you going to do with it other than spread it around and roll around in it? What are you going to actually deploy it?
Yeah, look, we're Scottish, right? So one thing that we're good at doing is that we're very, very careful with our money.
Okay.
Look, I think we don't know what the environment's going to look like, right? So we're not going to be doing anything aggressive or silly, because when is the next tranche of raising money? Is things going to get easier? Is things going to get worse? I don't know. So for us, it's obviously about extending the runway and giving us a bit of breathing space, but also really looking at continuing to grow our go to market. As I said, we've got 12 active enterprises, 16 contracts, but 12 generating revenue right now. 2 Fortune 500s, a lot of FTSE 100s, really growing those account base. The 2 accounts that are Fortune 500s are large accounts. We're working with them currently in the UK and a little bit in the US. For us, it's then about growing that footprint in the US. So we will be hiring some fractional people, maybe some full-time, but probably fractional, to help us grow that headcount within the US market. To this point, we've been in the UK, we're in London, and we're in Glasgow. Said we have got some customers in the US, but that is the next big play for us. We're not really looking at continental Europe or looking at that market. For us, it was about proving in the UK, working with some big customers here that we could easily or semi-easily be able to work with them in the US because they have large footprints. One of our companies is a $30 billion company, based in New York. So, let's spend more time with them in New York. Let's see if we can grow our revenue by continuing to do a good job with them, but do it in a different market. So that's really the play. Continue to grow that enterprise. Our North Star metric now is in active enterprise customers. That's a North Star metric. It used to be gigs posted, it used to be gigs hired, it used to be lots of different things, but we've realized that the focus for us is 2 products. Last year, the skills intelligence was through the roof. good this year, but not the same as last year. The on-demand has been absolutely through the roof this year, like record figures every single month. So for us, it's about riding that wave and not trying to just force product on people for the sake of it. If the buyer behavior is focusing on, hey, I need access to data talent really, really quickly, or cyber talent really quickly, and I'm going to need your on-demand to do it, then great. And let's continue that. We've also got into Microsoft's Azure marketplace. We built all of our technology on Microsoft. That was a call we made 2 years ago. We replatformed when we done the seed raise last time. We used a lot of that funding was to build, because the products we had built initially was built with sellotape and glue, and it worked, but we had to build enterprise grade technology, and that's what took us time to really start building traction. So that is now in place. Those enterprises are using us, and as I said, it is built on Azure. So we're continuing to partner with Microsoft on that to see, is that going to be a really good channel for us to continue to grow in that Microsoft space. And we're going to continue to double down in the tech teams. I think the HR space is very, very noisy, very heavy, lot of competitors there. For us, there's a little bit of a blue ocean strategy just now, because there's very few companies selling skills-based solutions to the tech teams. So we're going to continue down that path at the moment. So really, the short answer to that is a little bit of investment in the go-to-market, but we're really just going to double down on the strategy now. We know the ICP is correct. We know the product is doing what it needs to do, and we just need to keep doubling down on that now.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Especially where you've built the platform out and it includes payments, you're really able to provide the tech leader sort of one stop to look internally and externally to augment the project and, meet their goals. So to that end, I guess the answer's in your name, right? But how can tech leaders find more about this, whether they're in the US or anywhere?
Yeah. And just adding to that point, I think the one thing that I think will differentiate us, in the market is, there are skills intelligence solutions out there. There are skills platforms, but none of them have a 30,000 pool of owned talent that they vetted themselves. That's what we have, right? So, we're not a freelance platform trying to be something else. We have built everything else natively from the ground up. So we can tap into different technology solutions very, very quickly. But yeah, LinkedIn, Gigged.AI or me on LinkedIn. I'm going to be talking at the Collaboration X event out in Dallas in September. I'm going to be sharing some of the builds that we've done with OpenAI and Microsoft. I'm going to spend a lot of time in New York mainly. I am going to be at AI Summit in December and a few other trips. So the Gigged.AI website is the best place. We've got new blogs and content going up in that all the time. And we're going to be doing a live interactive demo of SIA in the next couple of days on LinkedIn and through the website.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, I could dig in. I'm a big believer in I'll just call it the contingent space, but it's been growing forever. And I could spend another hour with you, but for the sake of time, and we'll leave some things to bring you back and talk about. We'll check in a couple of quarters, see how things are going if you're up for it.
That'd be great.
Yeah. But hey, Rich, thank you for coming on Work Tech and telling your story here and sharing your origin story and all of it. Thanks a lot.
No problem, George. Thanks for having me.
Thanks everybody, wherever you're watching or listening, and until next time.